Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Valiant Wars and is from Strange Machine Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page to find out even more information than I could possibly tell you here. To do that, you're going to follow the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Go there, find out more information, and hopefully you'll consider backing the project. Now, Valiant Wars is a competitive deck-building card game, but also a push-your-luck card game. You and the other players are the would-be rulers of this kingdom that has been ripped apart by strife and war. There's monsters, and there's evil mercenaries and such, and you have to expel all of them. But in the process of doing that, you kind of want to grab power for yourself as well, and you're going to try and do that by conquering all these different territories and eventually the throne as well. But in order to do that, you have to gather your army, that's the deck building part, and your resources, the gold, also part of the deck building, and then try to fight the other players for these pieces of land. But that is easier said than done, because the more that you press yourself forward, the more you are besieged by these dark omens. And the more that happens, the more bad luck comes into your army, the more chances you're going to, well, bust, so to speak. Let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype copy of the game. So do bear in mind that what you see here in this version may change in the final version. Some of the art's not final. You'll see that there for the locations and such. But that's why you need to go to the Kickstarter page to see what the final version will be like. But then in any event, we will come back and discuss it further. Valiant Wars is a competitive deck-building, push-your-luck card game for 2 to 5 players. Each player is trying to save the kingdom from invading hordes, but also conquer the kingdom for themselves. During the course of the game, players will strengthen their deck of cards representing their army and resources. Then, each round, players will draw from their deck in an attempt to accrue strength to conquer locations and gold to acquire more champions. But if they're not careful, they'll draw too many Dark Omen cards and doom their own army. Whoever reaches the targeted number of victory points first, based on the number of players, or manages to take the final location, the Valiant Throne, is the winner of the game. To set up, first give each player their starting decks made up of 5 gold cards, 3 Dark Omen cards, and 2 soldier cards. Gold is the currency you'll need to purchase champions, which are powerful units necessary to win the game. Each card has a value of 1, but also a purchase cost of 1, because you can buy more during the game. Dark Omens are bad cards that can knock you out of the round if you press your luck too far, but they also give you 1 gold. More on these later. And soldiers are the weakest units you will utilize in the game, contributing only 1 strength to your army, but they do pad out your deck enough to delay drawing omens, and they're free to purchase. Shuffle your deck and leave it face down in front of you for now. Next, set up the various decks and champion lineup. Gold, Dark Omens, and Soldiers can be left face up. Determine the number of general location cards you'll be using based on the number of players, then shuffle them and leave them face down while also adding the Valiant Throne as the bottom card. Then flip the top card for the first round of play. Location cards give you the indicated amount of victory points in the top left corner if you can win them. But when you draw these cards on future turns, they may also reduce your strength, making it more difficult to win. They also have symbols that match those of the champion cards, which we'll talk more about in a moment. Speaking of victory points, set up the stacks of point tokens nearby. Take these as you acquire locations to keep track of the score. But beware, because the more points you acquire, the more Dark Omens you must take. More on that later. Lastly, shuffle all the champion cards together, then draw the top 5 and make a row by the other decks. Champions come in 3 categories: warriors, mystics, and rogues, as indicated by the icon on the top left, opposite their purchase costs on the top right. They not only have higher strength than soldiers, but many of them also have special abilities that take effect, either immediately when they're drawn from your deck, or when you've stopped drawing and have to resolve all of your cards. These are abilities like forcing other players to draw cards, flipping your cards or other players' cards to make them useless, or giving you bonuses to strength or gold based on how many of a particular type of champion you draw. Finally, decide the starting player. For the first round, this will be random, but on subsequent rounds, the player with the least victory points will go first. Even though cards are drawn simultaneously by the players, turn order matters for resolving card effects. Every round begins with each player shuffling their deck, including every soldier, gold, champion, or omen they used or gained in the previous round. On future rounds, this is important, as every card you own should always be shuffled in your deck at the start of the new round. Next, in every round after the first, you'll need to flip the next location card over on the deck, since the last one was acquired by one of the players. Then, every player starts drawing from their deck for the main phase. Everyone simultaneously draws a card and leaves it face up in front of them. If any champions that are drawn have draw effects, they must be resolved in turn order immediately. Then, every player repeats the process by drawing another card simultaneously, placing cards from left to right and making another row if they need to. A player may choose to stop drawing at any time simply by clearly saying stop. Their turn and all the cards they've drawn will resolve when every other player is finished drawing. However, a player can be forced to stop and lose all the rest of their turn if they draw 2 omen cards. Announce that you are out and shuffle all your cards back into your deck. You will not participate again until the next round. The only exception to this is if you draw more than 1 omen card at the start of the round. In that case, the omens stack and only count as 1 omen and 1 gold. So, if you draw 2 omens as your first 2 draws, your turn is not over. But if you draw a few more safe cards and then draw that 3rd omen card, your turn will end since you now have 2 omens, technically. When all players have either stopped or dropped out, the round moves on to card resolution. Only those players who stopped willingly will be able to participate, and will do so by looking at their card values and adding up all the gold and attack strength that they've accrued. Only unflipped cards count, and you must remember to take into account card special effects that take place during the resolution. Players will be allowed to purchase cards in the order they declared stop, using the gold they acquired, and may have purchased any 2 cards they can afford, in any combination of gold, soldiers, and champions. Lastly, whoever ends up with the highest attack strength value from their played cards will claim the face-up location card and also immediately take the indicated victory point tokens. However, note that for every 3 victory points a player accrues, they must add 1 Dark Omen card to their deck. When all that is done, the players participating in the resolution phase will gather together all of their cards, including all the champions and gold that they gained, and omen and location cards, if applicable, and shuffle them together into their deck for the next round. Cards get replaced in the champion lineup from the main deck until there are 5 again. Then play continues like this until either someone gets 8 to 10 points, depending on the number of players, or someone claims the Valiant throne location if it gets to that point. That is Valiant Wars. Well, very, very interesting game because, I thought I'd seen every deck building game and deck building game format and, way under the sun. And, there's been some games a little bit like Valiant Wars, but I think that the key here is that you're taking the core deck building game principle, which is that you start with some weak cards, you get stronger cards, and build up your deck as best you can in order to be as efficient as possible and to get as high of, in this case, I would say some games it's just straight up points. In this game, you're trying to accrue 2 different resources, money and attack strength, in order to get those points, if possible. So, that same basic principle is at work here. But adding the push your luck element is a very interesting thing. Because, first of all, when you do that, it actually takes a lot of the complexity out of the game, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. If you're someone who likes deck building games in principle, but doesn't like that some of them have really atrocious, setup and takedown times, and have a lot of other little extra Euro game type elements added to them, and just wanted it to be something much more simple. I think that's what comes to the table with Valiant Wars, because the push your luck element is very simple. It's just are you going to keep drawing or are you not? And there is decision making there. I don't want to make it seem like it's just there's no choice whatsoever. Absolutely not. You have to look at remember what's in your deck, what you've drawn already, what your odds are, whether you can even get anything beneficial out of the cards you've already drawn, and whether it's worth it, to say I could stop here and I'll have something, but is it going to be that helpful? Or this is where the risk comes into play, where it's I have to make a big play here, and I have to make a go at trying to get this location because either I'm falling behind or, I have to set myself up for the future where I might have even worse turns. So there is a lot of just decision making in that very simple, drawing and flipping over a card. But at the same time, you just know, like, okay, I have to get the best cards possible and, not waste my time too much with like things like soldiers or even necessarily gold at a certain point. But you know that you have to keep pressing forward and getting those best cards, so it doesn't bog yourself too down in that decision making. So in that case, it's much more accessible games to casual players, people who like deck building but want something simpler that you play in like a half hour or less potentially, because you can adjust the game points however you want in this case. I like that there is a ton of different cards in the game, and there's a potential for there to be way more in the future. It's an easily expandable game. Lots and lots of different units of all three of the different types, and different card effects, and so on and so forth. Different locations with different abilities potentially in the future. So there is a big expandability thing that could happen here. And the game can be mean at times too. Like there is some interaction with the other players when you use cards and decide to use targeting effects on other people, forcing someone to draw 2 cards. Those are things that can happen. So it's not a game where you're just sitting there by yourself and, in your own little world drawing cards. There is interaction, which, by the way, not a lot of deck building games have that, or it's very indirect interaction. In this case, it can feel very direct if someone really hits you and flips over one of your cards, or flips over your paladin when you're ready to turn in for a huge amount of attack strength. That can be a big deal. So there's a lot of different things going on like that. The game does not overstay its welcome, and you just keep moving forward to that point goal, as well as the cute anime style artwork. So if any of that appeals to you, if you like deck building games but want something a little bit different and also something you can play casually with a wider group of people, listen, you don't have to take my word for any of this. You can go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more information than I could possibly tell you here. Do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is Valiant Wars from Strange Machine Games. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.